Hey YouTube, I know that everyone has already made a response to these questions, and I am certainly the last to do so, but this is my first video, and I thought this would be a good introduction to the channel, so let's get going.
Are you able to understand the irony of responding to the perceived political correctness of the left with exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity of your own?
Okay, first, why are you trying to distance yourself from the term politically correct? I thought that being politically correct was a badge of honor. I don't get why you're trying to run away from the term, unless deep down you understand that it really is a negative thing. Second, you say exasperated reactionary hypersensitivity. You mean like this?
Zombies!
Oh, we should film it. Oh no.
Yeah, I don't really see a whole lot of that from non-SJWs. You'll need to provide some examples.
What is it with you people and skulls?
Yeah, that was, funny?
How do you define right-wing? Anti-SJWs often have an aversion to being labelled as right-wing, yet they regularly defend the right and bash the left. Therefore, why is being labelled right-wing a bad thing to you? And if it's because right-wing is used as a pejorative, can you not see how labelling people as SJWs or regressives is also pejorative?
I have no problem being labeled as right-wing. I am right-wing. So let me tell you what I believe. I believe in individualism over collectivism. This is one of the reasons I think the concept of social justice is evil. When people experience injustice, they do so as an individual, not as a group. Addressing injustice must be done on an individual basis, not on a group basis. It seems to be becoming an unpopular concept, but there needs to be equal protection under the law. The state needs to look at all of us as individuals, not as members of groups. The minute you try to have the law account for group memberships, you are inherently introducing injustice, not solving it. For example, for the past 60 years or so, the state has been trying to solve social problems experienced by less fortunate groups in the inner cities. How has that worked out? There can be no doubt that those problems have been magnified, not solved. There was a time when black families were as intact, if not more so, than white families. But that was before we encouraged poor women to marry the state through welfare. Generations of children have grown up without fathers in their lives, and it is they who have suffered the consequences. I believe free markets are an essential requirement for free people. That doesn't mean that free markets alone will bring about political freedom, but I don't believe there's a single example of a country with free people that doesn't also have at least a moderate level of economic freedom. If we screw with this, we do so at our own peril. The fact that especially millennials don't understand this is very frightening. They swarm to Bernie without realizing that the policies he supports must be implemented by people with guns pointed at the public. Free markets, on the other hand, only work by people agreeing to trade with each other because they both will be better off after the trade. Ben Shapiro says it best, socialism is rape, capitalism is consensual sex. I believe that we must be tolerant of each other. I don't have to approve of your lifestyle, and you don't have to approve of mine. We should leave each other alone to live our lives as we each see fit. Unless you are harming someone else, you should be free to pursue your own interests. And by harm, I mean actual harm. Hurt feelings or being offended doesn't qualify. I believe there is a direct relation to the size of government and the amount of corruption in that government. That only makes sense. If the state doesn't do much, then there are no opportunities for corruption. I believe that the state should be limited to protecting life, liberty, and property, and that's about it. Apart from these, there isn't anything that the state does that can't be done better and cheaper by the private sector. The growth of our government is one of the main causes for most of the issues we face. We try to help the poor through the minimum wage, and now the black unemployment rate is somewhere around 40%. In the space of 50 or 60 years, The kind hand of government beneficence has turned Detroit from one of the wealthiest, most productive cities in the world to a barren wasteland. God save us from their kind attention.
Rather than telling people you disagree with to drink bleach, wouldn't it be more productive for you to have an actual conversation about the issues you feel matter? Or is it just easier to do the bleach thing?
You've got the meme wrong. The meme is that we will be drinking the bleach in order to get away from the crap coming from you guys.
You claim to be proponents of rational, logical, evidence-based argumentation. That's great. That's entirely laudable. But when I look at your online activity, when I look at, I don't know, for example, your Twitter feed, that's often not what I see. How do you reconcile this claim to be evidence-based and rational and logical against stuff like, oh, I was just trolling you, oh, I was just shitposting, or TLDR?
You seem like an intelligent guy, so you should know you're not going to find truth in 140 characters.
No, seriously? What is it with you people and skulls?
If the concept of the multiverse is true, that means that somewhere out there is a universe in which you are hilarious.
Are you aware that the ridiculous buzzwords you helped to popularize, like SJW and cuck and regressive, have all lost whatever meaning they once had and only serve now as catch-all insults and pejoratives to derail any meaningful conversation?
For the last time, what is it with you people and committing actual literal felonies? Like, you might want to work on that? I mean, I thought the Ralph retort was so rational when he was fantasizing about beating up women with dyed hair, but then he assaulted a police officer, and finally I was convinced.
Golf clap? Golf clap.
In videos and in the comment sections, anti-feminists often take up the most extreme or the weakest feminist position they can find, or they just straight up misrepresent what the feminist position is. Instead, why not take up the strongest, most robust feminist argument you can find and really challenge yourself?
It seems like perhaps you haven't been paying attention, but if you were to throw up a video of what you consider to be the best feminist arguments, I guarantee you that it would get a response, or many responses. But as a general rule, the positions that get debunked are the popular ones, the ones that have made it into the popular culture, because those are the ones that are actually affecting things.
I am deeply concerned with male addiction rates, suicide rates, and abuse rates, because I have worked with these issues in the quote-unquote real world. Would you be willing as anti-feminists to put aside your differences with feminists for the greater good of addressing these issues, especially as the kind of solutions needed are not necessarily gendered? And if so, I would actually like you to let me know, because I'm not fucking around or presenting any gotchas here. I actually really think that we could get something done if we work together. So, yeah.
As a matter of principle, I think that sounds fine. The problem would be, I think, that your solutions would tend to be authoritarian, and so someone with my mindset would not want to go along with those on moral grounds. Therefore, as a practical matter, I don't know if it would work.
What is third wave feminism? Because I've often heard you folks insist that you have no objection to feminism in general. It's specifically third wave feminism that you have a quarrel with. So what is third wave feminism specifically? And what specifically about third wave feminism do you have such a problem with?
Hey, looky there, Steve. You've won the Kiss My Ass Award for condescension above and beyond the call of duty. First wave feminism did useful things like universal suffrage. It's things like safe spaces and trigger warnings that we find insufferable.
Why is it that this feminist represents all feminists, but this men's rights activist doesn't represent all men's rights activists?
Whoa, wait, sexism all of a sudden? Ladies and men are different? So we're supposed to punch men and not hit ladies and open doors for men, but not ladies? Fuck you, get out of my face, you tiny piece of shit.
No one is saying that Trigglypuff is representative of all feminists. Trigglypuff is just the perfect meme. I am not an MRA, and I don't know that this other guy is either. All I do know is that he really likes chicken, although probably not as much as Michael Rowlands.
Why am I continually asked to answer for the views of feminists if I agree with feminism's overall aims, but don't agree much with those particular feminists? Does that mean that I can ask you to answer for anybody who labels themselves similarly to you, even if you don't agree much?
If someone asks you to answer for views that you don't agree with, well, that's what they invented the word no for. That's a life lesson that I'm kind of surprised you don't already know.
If SJWs are bad because they spend too much time whining and don't talk about real problems, then why aren't you talking about those problems instead of just whining about the other people over and over and over for literally years? I mean, in the scale of priorities, that's like even lower, right? You know, you've got the real problems, you've got the things that feminists worry about, and then you've got you going, oh, how dare they? Just, how dare they have different priorities from me? Why can't they do what I do? Whine about whining. Forever. For a living. That's healthy.
First, please don't start calling yourselves SJWs. The last thing I need, in addition to being called a racist and fascist, is to be accused of anti-Semitism for disagreeing with you. Second, you really are missing the point here. SJWs are trying to use the state, in other words a gun, to force their preferences on everyone else. I once heard Penn Jillette say that he would use a gun, that is lethal force, to stop a murder or a rape, but not to build a library. That is exactly what you're trying to do. You are the problem.
Why don't you seem as concerned with actual feminist theory in academia as you are with wrecking people for views?
Surely you can understand that you people are just so easy to make fun of, and that can be really entertaining. But also, academic points are just more obscure and won't be addressed as much as popular points.
Since so many of you profess to be admirers of second-wave feminism as opposed to third-wave feminism, I thought it would be interesting to ask which second-wave feminists in particular do you appreciate? Which books written by second-wave feminists have you read and found interesting? Which second-wave feminist activists have you specifically admired as you formed the opinion that you like second-wave feminism but you have no use for third-wave feminism? I'm just curious.
I would refer you to the previous times I've discussed the difference between popular points and academic points regarding feminism.
You do understand that reading the title of a book or an article or watching the first 15 seconds of a video is not going to give you a deep, nuanced understanding of what that book or article or video is about, right? That being said, how can you expect to understand or critique feminist sources if you don't even attempt to understand what they're trying to say?
If you really want a critique of academic feminism, then there are people who do that. For example, Teal Deer. I personally think that it's more profitable to critique feminism as it is commonly understood by rank-and-file feminists. This isn't a hard concept, people.
Why is trying and failing to debunk a study into sexual assault the #1 priority for a rational thinker now? Does it maybe say something about your priorities? Does it maybe? Nah, it's fine, it's the feminazis, we have to stop them. They're taking away our video games. Look, Anita, I'm sorry, but we can't actually destroy video games. That doesn't make any sense.
First, it wasn't a study. It was a survey in which almost anything imaginable was considered sexual assault. If a female college student receives an unwanted wink from a male college student, she hasn't been sexually assaulted. Having said that, it is important to point out that the way the survey has been used by feminists is to claim that 1 in 4 women will be raped during their 4 years at college. This is patently false. If you go to fbi.gov and scroll down, select crime statistics. Select crime stats for 2015. Then select offenses known to law enforcement. Then select Table 9, which is offenses known to law enforcement by state, university, and college. You can find the rape statistics for a given university. For example, in the University of Missouri, which virtually exploded with SJW overreaction in 2015, there were 68,643 total students in 2015 over all 3 campuses. The number of rapes reported for 2015, again over all 3 campuses, was 4.
One of the major arguments that I see in many of your videos is that it is possible to separate criticism of the religion of Islam from the actual Muslim people. And yet, this line seems to be crossed very often. I see things like raghead or camel fucker or other things like that in your comment sections. I see people taking very serious shots at Muslims in videos and hangouts, and they don't get called out. At least not that I can see. So my question is this: why should a person of conscience who is concerned about the Muslim people and their community not being harmed or mistreated, why should they believe that you're actually only attempting to look at the ideas and talk about the ideas if you ignore bigotry that's occurring right in front of you? And in that light, would you be willing to break bread and salt with moderate Muslim people on your videos, have hangouts, invite them to your channels, just in order to build some bridges there and to learn more about what they think and how they feel and what their experience has been, so that information and knowledge can be furthered?
I swear I don't understand the love affair that SJWs have for Islam. Countries in which Islam dominates are not beacons of enlightenment. Having said that, of course it's possible to distinguish between Muslims and Islam, just like it's possible to distinguish between Christians and Christianity. However, I will not be censoring my comment section because of that whole, free speech thing.
Do you deny that systemic racism against black people is like a thing in general? If so, what? Okay, just step over, just cover your ears for a second and let the smart people talk. If not, why is it so much more important to you to demonize groups like Black Lives Matter than to actually use your platforms to discuss actual solutions to issues surrounding race and racism?
With one exception, I do deny that institutional racism is a thing. That exception being the school system in the inner cities. The problem with that example is that it is a result of 60 years of Democrats running the cities, and as we all know, the black vote is a lock for Democrats, no matter how badly the Democrats screw blacks. Democrats are going to pander to unions, including the NEA, which exists to represent the interests of the teachers and doesn't give a crap about students. If you want better schools, vote differently. If you want to show me other examples of what you believe to be institutional racism, I'll listen.
If you've ever discussed or done a video about black-on-black crime, when are you going to do a video about white-on-white crime and what we, as white people, can do to solve the problems in our community?
I will make a video about white-on-white crime just as soon as white activists start rioting because of all the black police officers killing whites. Because most whites are killed by whites, just as the vast majority of blacks who are murdered are killed by other blacks. According to the FBI in 2015, 500 whites were murdered by blacks, while 229 blacks were murdered by whites. Also, there was almost an equal number of whites murdered by whites and blacks murdered by blacks, 2,574 and 2,380 respectively. Also, according to the FBI, for 2015, there were 7,039 black murder victims and 5,854 white victims. That is despite the fact that, according to the 2010 census, blacks make up only 13% of the population compared to 72% of the population being white. Why don't you care about all of those blacks who are dying? The only possible explanation is that you're a racist who takes great joy in the suffering and death of blacks. You're disgusting.
Why is a literal teenager's different definition of racism from you so horrifying that you all have to go, "No! No, we have to stop him! We've got to debunk him now!" Ah!
You do realize that according to his definition of racism, you are a racist. The fact that that doesn't bug you must mean it's true.
Wherever did you get the idea that racism was a self-applied identity? And if the only true racists are the racists who self-identify as racists, how can we ever expect to make any social progress to reduce racism? Or did I just answer my own question?
Racism is a belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capabilities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. I suppose it's possible that someone could have those beliefs subconsciously, but that small level of self-awareness must be almost non-existent. The way we make progress against racism is not to make everything about race, and to teach our children that race isn't a factor in determining a person's character or value. I think that society in general has been doing a pretty good job at that. I think that Black Lives Matter is a step in the wrong direction, that they are creating division and racism, not solving it.
You often say that you are for equality of opportunity, but if people of color, for instance, have to overcome barriers whites do not, such as discrimination and unequal treatment, as are well documented in various studies, then how can the current situation be thought of as equal opportunity in any real way? And why do you consider it racist to discuss these issues?
I don't consider it racist to discuss these issues. Hell, I'll talk about anything. I do consider it ignorant to lump all blacks into one group and all whites into another when talking about opportunities. In case you hadn't noticed, all of us start out in a different place. None of us in the human race are exactly equal in talents, upbringing, wealth, the stability of our home life, ad infinitum ad nauseum. Are you proposing the abolition of the family in deference to state control of children? That's the only way to try and make the playing field equal, and history shows us the results would be shared misery for all children. Hooray! The point is to have a society where anyone who has a minimum amount of the advantages listed above, with a good amount of hard work, can improve their situation, can make a better life for themselves than what they were born into. Unfortunately, the left seems determined to prevent that wherever they can.
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, if I say this cat is pretty, I don't mean that all other cats aren't pretty. Like, do you really not get why saying all lives matter in response to Black Lives Matter is not only racially insensitive, but just patently ridiculous?
Do you understand basic English syntax? Like, if I say all lives matter, that necessarily includes black lives? Do you really not get why having racists insist that saying all lives matter is racially insensitive and patently ridiculous is not a convincing argument?
Isn't it offensive to men to assume that a man could only ever want equality for women, and therefore be comfortable with feminism as a whole in order to get laid, and that reduces us to beasts? If that was the case, wouldn't I attempt to get laid from my views instead of not ever trying that?
The problem is that you think that feminism equals wanting equality among the sexes, and I don't think that's what it means at all. I believe in equality among the sexes, and races, and just about any other way you'd like to divide people up, because I believe in individuals. As for what you do or do not do in order to get laid, I neither know nor care.
If you say you're an egalitarian, will you call out the man-hating slurs that you see coming from people within your community? People who use terms like cuck, beta male, faggot, or mangina? All of these things basically distill men down into thinking that the most important thing about them is to be having sex with a woman. That's rather offensive. So what are you doing to stop this kind of behavior in your community?
I don't call myself an egalitarian. That term has been used by authoritarians to justify all kinds of theft, murder, and the like. I'm an individualist. I won't try to prevent anyone from speaking. However, if I disagree, I may say so.
What is the number of followers, the number of likes, the number of dislikes, the number of retweets, the number of subscribers, any of those numbers, any of those metrics, what have they got to do with the argument? Why even mention the number of followers you have? What difference does it make?
I'm not sure who it is you're actually talking to, but the answer is none.
Why is it that you go on and fucking on about safe spaces and trigger warnings and delicate little flowers, but continue to hide behind your cartoon avatars and your childish pseudonyms? And whenever anyone calls you out on your sexist, racist, homophobic, bigoted rhetoric, you become the argument of your own scorn and are hashtag triggered, as they say.
The authoritarianism represented by safe spaces and trigger warnings and the like threaten to destroy our society. Simple as that. You want to institute thought crime and groupthink. I think you may be happier in the PRNK. Bon voyage. I use this avatar for 3 reasons. 1, you people are dangerous. I have a life and want to keep it. 2, it's easier to do than to try and film myself. I have enough of a challenge doing this as is. And 3, I have a face for radio and am being kind to you by not showing it.
Are you willing to publicly acknowledge and admonish the massive amount of hatred, bullying, harassment, and intimidation that a lot of your fans infringe upon people? And I don't mean these tiny disclaimers that you put under the description fold or flash for 2 seconds at the beginning of the video that you know nobody reads. I mean a public and ongoing anti-bullying stance. Or do you kind of like watching your fans go around harassing people and calling them slurs and telling them to kill themselves? You kind of like it, don't you? I mean, if that's your thing, and I guess that's just what you're into, just makes you a dick.
I don't think someone has told you, but you are in control of your own comments section. You can delete comments if you don't like them. You can block people. You can be like Steve and block everyone. You are in control. Also, disagreeing is not bullying. And finally, no one is controlling other people to make them go and quote-unquote bully you. These are individuals with their own free will.
Why do you find it so hard to believe that feminists are being harassed online?
I don't find it hard to believe at all. I just really don't care. Everyone is harassed online. It's part of the internet experience.
Do you understand the key importance of reproducibility and repeatability in scientific research? That's simply going to Google Scholar, doing a 30-second search for keywords and pulling out the first paper you find that backs up your stance is not a particularly credible way to do research. That you have to have a much broader overview, to read the material, to follow the citations through, to look at the broad brush approach to a particular problem. You do realise that you're as much of a social justice warrior as those you critique. It's just that you espouse a different form of social justice, a rather less considerate, rather less forgiving, rather less kind form of social justice.
Reproducibility and repeatability are key aspects of the natural sciences, not so much the social sciences, which is what we're concerned with here. And most of this question is just you prattling on, not saying much. I'm sure that this is probably directed to someone in particular, but I don't know who. I also think that this isn't the correct forum for you to try and ask a question directed to one person, but that's the choice you appear to have made. Now, the second part of your question is really what I want to respond to. I deny being pro-social justice in any form. As I've stated before, I'm for individual justice. I'm for the rule of law. I'm for the individual over the collective. I also think that you are deluded if you think that what you support is in any way considerate or forgiving or kind. Dude, you need to turn your gaze inward a bit. Social justice is the reign of terror after the French Revolution. Social justice is the cultural revolution in China. Social justice is everyday life in the People's Republic of North Korea. These are the logical ends of social justice.
If you identify as an egalitarian, then I'm interested in your take on the usefulness of the concept of the original position as laid out by John Rawls in his theory of justice.
And this, people, is what condescension looks like.
As a supporter, as a proponent of freedom of speech, why do you want to quash academic freedom? If you're not familiar with the concept of academic freedom, it's worth, in the UK at least, looking up the 1988 Education Reform Act and seeing what that says about the rights of academics to put across unpopular opinions.
I believe you should seek medical attention because apparently someone has hit you on the head with a brick or something similar. SJWs are the power in almost every university or college in the US, and from what I can determine in the UK as well. You are not the unpopular opinions, and your opinions are not being censored. Geez, you should come outside your office once in a while. Your side is the book-burning, platform-denying, ranting lunatics. Some of your questions have really floored me in their cluelessness.
Why are you so obsessed with Anita Sarkeesian?
I personally am not. However, she is one of, if not the, most well-known third-wave feminists. So I think that's your answer.
Do you really think you can spend your entire life in a perpetual state of emotional immaturity? Do you actually imagine that you will be able to perpetuate your adolescence for your entire existence? Wait, didn't somebody else ask this one? Wait, I gotta... Ah, fuck.
Well, that's it for my first video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you did. I'll try and make one of these about once a week. So, thank you.